actually be able to heal ourselves, start unique selves onto our holistic self, which is why I express wholeness and balance. But honestly, y'all, power up, big woke.
Malcolm X so poignantly put together a speech called The White Liberal. Check that out if you want to go read about it, but it talks about how the white liberal is more racist than the conservative liberal. The white liberal plays to be the black man's friend for political power, all while using us as a pawn in their scheme to run the country. Anyway, there's no need for me to go further on that.
What's up, Avo? Did you get my message?
YouTube, the white
Somebody on. See this talks I be having. This Erudition. If you want to learn something, Dr. Bayfriend to get it to you.
And this is why a lot of more educated black people or Moorish people,
is there people in DC? They trying to say DC a ghost town, and that
liberal party.
Joe Biden doing all this out of Tyler Perry Studios. I don't know. I know somebody that live in DC though.
Power up. Yes, that's definitely a very interesting share. And family, if y'all go to YouTube and type in Dr. Bay, I have over 100 different playlists with hundreds of videos in each playlist of many of the people who have been instrumental in doing their part to assist us in getting
already
the levels of clarity that's needed so that we could.
They talking about DC a ghost town. I say it's a ghost town. I'll go live there.
Level of critical thinking and discernment, and choose our own position, choose our own choice, and things like that.
They say they ain't using the White House. I say I'll ask somebody that live there.
I've shared several things there from many different, angles and perspectives.
Yeah.
Which a lot of it assists us in getting to a more holistic, more balanced perspective.
They say he ain't in the White House though. They say he ain't in the White House. They say they doing all that White House stuff at Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta.
My brother, more for you. Here. Y'all give me 1 second here. I want to add a link into the title for everyone to be able to go to and start checking into the things and the tenets of nationality. The link is rvbaypublications.com. So I'm gonna see if my brother could add the link. I don't really have it on this particular. Y'all give me 1 second. I will.
Uh-oh. What's up, Damien? What's up, Damien? Oh, shoot. What's up, Damien? Oh, shoot. No, you don't put both up there. We can't agree. All right. You getting the heat press already? She got a vinyl. We gotta hook the computer up today. We're gonna hook the computer up today on the table with her vinyl snatcher. And she gonna start cutting. She gonna start cutting out her letters. I think right now all she got is black and white, but we gotta get all the colors. And then she gonna start printing them.
All right, family. Y'all, if y'all would, could y'all chime in and let me know if that link actually came through? Because I really can't see it on on this particular panel.
Yeah, it's up there, Doc. The link up there.
And y'all definitely let me know if it came through and if it's clickable. And from that link, family, anyone that has any questions, anything that they find in that link that they would like to chime in the back chats or receive additional information or some level of clarity about any of those things, y'all definitely chime in there. And got a few messages here we're gonna play, and we'll begin to talk about it.
Hey, Dr. Bay. Nationalities, reparations. Yes, please continue talking about that. Yeah, because in America, you're never gonna get more resources than they allow you to have, and so they're not gonna give you enough where they're behind, and especially in the capitalist society, they're not gonna want to be on the bottom because that's how capitalism works. Someone has to be on the bottom as the servant class. They're not going to be at the bottom as the servant class. And so, yeah, they'll give you money, but you're still a servant to them. And so, you know, create your own kingdom, create your own nation, create your own labor class, create your own everything. Get out of their system because we don't look like them. And that gives them justification to continue to not empathize with us and use us like machines, like their labor.
Honest to you, bro, Chris. Definitely appreciate you in this space. Definitely look forward to some of the things we're going to do to build a economic base of financial literacy through apps and other things like that. Tapping into your computer expertise. But there's definitely a few things I want to make the efforts to unpack in your sharing. One is, you spoke to their system or their American system. Any of the things that I share are not a direct rebuttal to anything that anyone shares, but I only share things to add clarity and to try and clear some perspective up. So when we say American, I would encourage us to get out of the habit when we speak about the United States and we call it America. I would encourage us to strive to start making the efforts to try and not make that association as if it's one and the same. Because America, what's called America, is the continent. That includes Canada, Central America, and South America, right? These are the Americas, right? So the United States of America includes all of the states or nation states that are included in the continental land area known as the Americas. Yet the United States or the U.S. citizenry is the 50 so-called states that are considered to be part of the Union. That Union definitely taps into unum sanctum.
We learning something today. Y'all know y'all might not want to hang around.
Y'all definitely look up UNAM.
What's up?
SANCTUM. Unum sanctum. That'll definitely give some clarity as to what's really going on as far as
we learning something today. We was chilling yesterday before we learned something today. Erudition, y'all. That's a big word.
To ensnare everyone, whether you call yourself black, whether you call yourself colored, whether you call yourself white, whether you call yourself by anything other than a nationality. It is designed to strip you and place you under a jurisdiction that's referred to as colorable law. Y'all look up colorable law, right? Also look up the difference between legal versus lawful. Everyone can do this right now. Everyone can go to their search engine, anyone that they choose. They can type in legal versus lawful. Go to the images, and it'll be several placards that'll give you at least some idea of what I'm making reference to, so that you can embrace the mindset that there is a difference between the things that go on in the legal system of legalese and actual law, which is based off of common law, natural law, universal law, or God law, or the Most High, or whatever reference you choose to make.
The Creator.
In expressing that for yourself personally. So, and also, bro, Chris, you tapped into the importance of establishing our own economic base.
That's my real name, y'all.
All of these things comes with the nationality. Nationality is about...
See, I'm on another platform.
Reconnecting or realigning yourself with a nation. Nations refer to geographical locations or landmass, right? So the nationality that I always promote and encourage due to 40 years of studying it is Moorish American or Moor nationality, right? Because Moor is the nationality of the world. Yet definitely don't take my word for it. I know that there are many different narrow versions that the social reconstruction has allowed for the people to be aware of, so that they could think that it was the Moors that did a lot of atrocious things, that abused the people, that set their people up, that, you know, a lot of these things, you know, have been put out there, but they were put out there on purpose. If you notice, out of all of the brothers and sisters of liberation and struggle to uplift the people, they've always made movies about them, they've written books about them, they've placed them in certain places, right? Because most of them were talking either Negro, Black, or colored lingo, right? Which is not their fault, it's not their intent, yet they were not aware of what that game was all about. But they've never written anything about this one brother who was actually at the root or responsible for all of the understanding that all of those leaders had, and that was Noble Drew Ali. Y'all definitely tap into Noble Drew Ali, understanding who he was, who he is, and what contribution he made to that struggle. And when you do that, what you'll find as you begin to trace back through, you know, the things that Martin Luther King was doing, until he finally realized that he felt in one of his speeches that he had led his people into a burning house, and that when the ships landed in Plymouth, we were here. You know, all of that speaks to the indigenous nature. Or when El Haj, what most of our family erroneously still refers to him as Malcolm X, they do that on purpose. They could have made a movie giving honor to him as he established his nationality of El Haj Malik El Shabazz, and the L seems to be first, but it's actually written from right to left, which most original languages practice. So when he began to talk about nationalism, they definitely made a decision to do the things that we know of that happened, and all the way back into the Panther Party and things of that nature, and what those individuals were truly about. Y'all definitely check into the 10-point system and things of that nature, and it's going to tie you back to many, many different movements, on back into the Nation of Islam that was established by Elijah Muhammad as the world known, but his original attribute or nom de guerre and title was Elijah Poole Bey. He was definitely a member of the Moorish Science Temple and the Moorish Holy and Divine and National Movement, and many of them, from what we know of as the 5%ers, they came out of the Nation of Islam, which, if you notice, everything ties all the way back to the movement in the early 1900s that was established by Noble Drew Ali. And he was speaking nationality. And his message was to share with the people that if we are to find that power within ourselves and tap into ourselves, we have to understand that we're suffering from an identity crisis, because the identity of something tells you its purpose, its usefulness, and its mission, and its objective, and it reconnects you to the planet so that you actually have access to what we call reparation, or those things necessary to repair and build a nation, like resources, like all of the things that it takes to provide shelter, all of the things that it takes to provide what we call currency or wealth, or things to sustain life, right? So this is what that mission was and is about, to reclaim our inheritance, because through your forefathers and your foremothers, you have an inheritance that you are allotted. We are an extension of our ancestors. We are the continuation. So we're still linked, and all of our DNA is still linked to the things and the land masses that we were from. So they gave us a story of the Atlantic slave trade, which did happen, but it did not happen the way that the reconstructed history provided it and allocated it to us. So there's a lot to unpack that we'll tap into today, but let's definitely get through some of the rest of these etheric expressions. For Rice, power up.
Yeah, it's up there, Doc. The link up there.
Honest. Appreciate you, brother.
I do see the link. It's there. It says R.V. Bay Publications Changing the Literature Civic.
Appreciate you, brother. Some crazy guy.
It's working, Doc Bay. Yes, Doc Bay. It absolutely is. I just tested it.
All right, let's sports drama. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bay. Yeah, man, it's just due to my lack of knowledge and my own brainwashing and how do I say this? The categorization of things and me not knowing who is who and who is the enemy and all that. That's what leads my logic astray. But if we're using the proper terms, then we can actually see the enemy and avoid them or redirect them. Me thinking that it's America and not knowing that it's actually something else, I'm gonna be fighting the wrong enemy, guys. So knowing the terms used and the tricks and the belief system and the way our brain categorizes things and the way they've categorized us and the way they force us to categorize things, all that is important so we can all speak on the same logical terms. So yeah, continue to do the good work, Dr. Bay.
Understood you, Chris. And oftentimes, they'll throw this term is thrown around. They'll say, well, that's just semantics, right? Now that's kind of twofold, because if you get into that, you'll understand that semantics speaks to a different type of narrative. But the reason that it's thrown around like that is to discourage people from digging into the difference in terminology, the expressions of words, as if words don't have power. If y'all notice that oftentimes when we see our disagreements or our expressions on these apps, these different social medias, you'll notice that a weapon is being used. That weapon is referred to as the two-edged sword. It cuts to and fro, which is called the tongue, right? So you'll hear people utilizing that weapon in very aggressive, very, different manners, very, expressive. And this is what we use to argue with. This is what we use to beat one another down verbally. This is what we use. So there's a lot of power in words. Words have a lot of relevance in their expression and the things that they do. And even people that come from spiritual or religious backgrounds, no matter what that school of thought was, if you really look into some of those studies, you'll see that it always made reference to the importance of words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and so forth and so on. Whether you understand that words are a type of vibration or a type of frequency, and frequency and vibration actually formulates your reality, because a lot of the times the words help to mold the thoughts, because most of the time, if we're not tapped into the reclamation or the reclaiming of our own minds, then we're speaking things that were regurgitated to us. So we're repeating things that we may not know the origins of them or what vibrational frequency is attached to them. So we speak them out into existence, not realizing that we're doing so. In doing so, we're actually tapping in to creating the very things that whomever formulated these words through spells. That's why we had spelling class, in school, and the compulsory education system, which brings me to another point that I definitely want to put out there. Everybody, if you have not done so before, definitely look up education and then look up erudition, Erudition. And I know many of y'all have heard me say this before, but I often repeat things on purpose, because this is how you implant grooves into the mind. Sometimes these things go over our head. People have said to me oftentimes that, when I'm sharing that I talk fast, I say so much, I'm talking over people's head or things like that, or it's not resonating. So I do repeat things often, because you may not catch it the first 20 times, but hopefully you'll catch it that 21st time. And so the encouragement is to look up education, then look up erudition. This is not to speak ill of education, because it has its place, it has its purpose, it has its use. Yet, once you really look into it, you'll see a distinguishable difference. You'll see that one is totally dependent on an external source only, that comes in the form of curriculum or things that have already been provided or approved by a set agenda, things of that nature.
And it don't have to be the truth.
Thing that we were all brought up on, that the best way to get to a better place in life is to...
It's kind of like being educated on Santa Claus.
Through this process of getting educated. Yet ultimately
You
down the
highly
road,
educated on
now,
Santa Claus.
see
Santa
that
Claus not even a real person.
when we're being honest with ourselves, we're using mirology, we're really analyzing those things, we'll realize that most of the compulsory educational system, as well as the higher learning system, were designed to prescribe you into a certain type of job. A job, to me, is another acronym that stands for JOB, or just over broke, and it's designed to keep you that way. Most of us will always need that next paycheck. We don't have a stockpile of them because we don't need them. You know, we're existing and functioning in a system that requires us to always be just over broke. And that's how the system is flowing. So most of these educational systems are designed to prepare you for employment. And when you really get to looking into the word employment and being an employee, you'll find that it's very synonymous with servant or slave. Now, I definitely want to make a distinction between the word slave, because it is impossible for people who are not Slavic or who...
Hey, Dr. Bay, can you tell us the definition of family?
A type of war that is physical and mental and spiritual. So it is a war of your mind, a war of your body, and a war of your spirit. So we're prisoners of war. So we're not slaves. We were never slaves. We were prisoners of war. And many of us always fought to maintain that level of freedom. But through trickology, manipulation, the pen is mightier than the sword in most cases. So this is how we was actually stripped and robbed of most of our inheritance. It was not through actual combat, but it was actually through manipulation and propaganda, things that were promoted by individuals like Sigmund Freud, Eric Bernays, and those individuals that have contributed to developing a social engineered structure of telling people what to think, not equipping them with the capabilities of how to think, but actually what to think. So these are things that I definitely want us to tap into for yourself. Again, I often say, never take my word for anything. Always be willing to do your own, not only research, because research, you're researching things that have already been searched, things that have already been placed, things that have already been made available. Never forgetting that we went through a reconstruction period where they reconstructed the history, they reconstructed the maps, they reconstructed the names. All of this was to cause confusion, to keep the people disconnected from what the truth is. So ultimately, we're seeking truth, and that truth lies and still is within us, passed on through our DNA, right? I refer to that as the library. Everything researchable in the external is the library. Everything internal, that connection, tapping into that, which may sound foreign, may sound ridiculous to some people, yet I practice it, I know it's real, yet it's not for me to know, it's for you to know. So anything that you receive from an external source that you research, always be willing to insert it, apply it to your library, weigh it up, balance it in your own intellect, and continue the quest of connecting the dots and coming to a centered, balanced formulation of what that information is designed to do, so that it was designed to put you in formation. You may need to express out formation. So all of these things definitely make sense, and the encouragement is to just always be willing to empower yourself. This is what self-love is. This is what love must start with. It must start with self-love, but too much of anything can be detrimental. What can work for you could also work against you. Too much self-love can become selfishness, right? So we definitely don't want to get into those areas. We want to stay as balanced as possible, so that once we're whole and loving self, then we're capable of loving someone else or another. And this also would assist in healing a lot of these relationship, situations that we debate about and we argue about, because we have fractionalized or fractured beings trying to connect with other fractionalized and fractured beings, and this oftentimes leads to disassociation or disconnection or disruption. So the encouragement is to strive to be whole within yourself and connect with others that are striving to be whole within themselves, so that we can ultimately create a concept of wholeness and therefore balance, and being a collective enlightenment, meaning that each and every one of you has value and something very valuable to contribute and add to the puzzle. Each piece is important, yet one is nothing without the rest. So let's definitely be a collective enlightenment as well. And when I say power is the people, inside of each and every one of us, regardless to what name or term you apply to it, there's an aspect of source. Now, we are in a finite existence, meaning it has a beginning, therefore it will have an ending. And oftentimes we're trying to comprehend that which is infinite, or that which is of source, or as far as we can comprehend, always was, is, and evermore shall be. So oftentimes this is where we come into a lot of the disagreements, because we're trying to comprehend infinite reality or truth from a finite perspective. So the encouragement is always to tap in, find that kingdom within, that queendom within. And this brings me to another expression about when we refer to ourselves as kings, queens, emperors, or empresses, right? It's not a social construct ideology of having dominance or authority or rule and dictatorship over someone else or anything else. It's an expression for you to sit on the throne of your own mind, heart, body, and soul, your own kingdom, your own queendom, your own empire, because you have 150 trillion cells within your body, each one doing a different thing, providing its level of chaos. And you have 10 times more bacteria and parasitical entities that live within your avatar, your skin suit, your body. So this is your empire, this is your queendom, this is your kingdom. So sitting on that throne, taking charge, taking control of that is very key. So in this way, you're absolutely kings, queens, emperors, and empresses. So it's not an expression of abrogating on someone else's peace and well-being and their freedom. That's definitely something I wanted to slide out there. And honest to everyone that is in the room, everyone that has come through the room. Honest to you, Brother Judah. Shalom, Shalom, power up. Honest to you, Brother Evolve. Empress Smile More, the Empress King, my Brother Augustus, Empress Titi Wolf, Brother Rice, Islam, Empress Zara, Faith, and the brother, some crazy guy. So, and the Empress Blackly. Much love to y'all. So this was kind of off schedule because I was intending to broadcast the sharing from the room of the individual that chose to utilize clickbait and make his expressions. I'm not sure what's going on over there. I've tried to get in the room from several different avenues, and I seem to be blocked for whatever reason. Yet I'm sure it'll be shared or expressed in some way. I definitely have tried to build relationships, which is a relatability with any and everyone here, because that's all we're actually doing here. That's what this experience is for. It is to find those connections, find those tribes, just connect those tribes back to those kingdoms, connect those kingdoms back to those empires, connect those empires back to the Most High. So ultimately, that's the mission that we're all on in one way or another. So I definitely want to extend honors to y'all. And so back into the concepts of nationality. It is taught that the best way to be the most proficient in expressing your nationality is to study, study, study. In fact, we often encourage many of the brothers and sisters to not speak publicly about anything until they've at least put a couple or a few years into their consistent studying before they express to share it publicly. Because when you're in a neophyte state and you express things about it publicly, it often comes off extremely misleading, not intentionally, not knowingly, but often in that case. Or if your intent is not rooted and founded in what we refer to as the 5 principles. The 5 principles are love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And we always express that you definitely absolutely need to be about love. And we just spoke to that about self-love and extending that love to a holistic love. Truth.
Being on the right
weighing
side.
all of the information
Not the black side,
from many different angles, many perspectives. People often say facts. I definitely don't knock anyone saying facts, but facts is not truth. Facts is that you were able to assimilate certain information, put it together, and formulate a perspective and an ideology that appeases whatever position you are in, so it serves you. So those facts are necessary and beneficial, yet they're not necessarily true. And there's another expression that says you got your truth his truth, and then the truth. So when you combine all of those perspectives, the goal ultimately is to get to the truth and be the truth. And so peace, that peace deals with that inner energy, that balance, right? You know, I often say that the best way to obtain that inner peace is to project as much energy as you can into your higher self, or the higher aspects of yourself, because you have a lower self as well. This is basically what the entire carnal or avatar or skin suit is making reference to, and all of its wantings and all of its desires and all of its state, right? So you have a lower self that you, in this experience, won't disconnect from your higher self. So you put energy into your higher self so that it raises your entire self, and now your lower self is where your higher self was, right? If you could picture it, to visualize it, it's sort of like a six-pointed star, or a hex alpha, right? You have two trinity or two triune, one pointing up, one pointing down, and they're interlocked, right? So you put energy into your higher self, whether it be knowledge, whether it be, you know, health, whether, no matter what aspect it is, then it is expressed through application. It becomes wisdom. So that raises your entire self. And because they are interlocked, if you look at where your lower self was, now it is where your higher self was, right? So that's called inner peace, or positive energy activates constant elevation, which is inner peace. So, and then freedom, because freedom is an expression of that which all of us actually seek through one way or another, whether it be through our spiritual expressions, our physical expressions, or our mental expressions. We strive and we're rooted in the concept of freedom, right? This is why I often refer people back to the terms legal versus lawful, because only one of those makes reference to the free you, the inalienable, unalienable rights that you were born with from the Most High, the things that are tapped into your being from a natural perspective as nature, those things that should be common, right? This is law, right? I made a reference, you know, about how in order to assist us in understanding it, law, we can look at it how everything in the physical world has a certain geometry to it, right? It has a certain dimension. It has a length, angle, or width to it, right? That's LAW, that's law. And it consists of land, air, and water. That's all of the things, you know, on the periodical chart, all of the things in element, all of the things that make up this avatar, which is not the real you, but it's the false you, because we are truth and falsehood strangely mixed. Yet that land, air, and water is LAW, that's law. So all of these things are divinely, you know, designed to spark a level of reference to you realizing that you are born as a living, live, natural being with the freedom from source to express yourself, as long as you don't infringe on another's peace and well-being. And then this is what some of the tenets and the instructions of nationality is all about. Learning, knowing how to honor yourself and to honor all others as self, so as to not infringe on their expression. And so when you have love, truth, peace, and freedom, and if you violate any of those perspectives, then by your own actions, by your own energy, justice, the fifth principle, must catch you. Justice is bringing things back into balance. We often refer to it as you reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. What you put out, you get back. When there are many different expressions of justice, and this is why the scales are the symbol or the symbolic expression of that justice, because you're seeking that balance. And this is something we should definitely practice within ourselves, as well as practice with all others. No matter what our angles are, no matter what our perspectives are, no matter what our beliefs are, if you really get into the core of all of them, you'll find that they're all encouraging you, they're all guiding you toward one realization: know thyself. So this is definitely what most of my expressions have been geared toward, trying to encourage us to at least get into that. And that includes whether you refer to yourself as cuz, blood, people, folk, Christian, Mason, Muslim, Jew, all of these different expressions that the social engineering has educated us to think must be at odds and must oppose one another. Even from the symbology of like the yin and the yang, right? People think that these are opposing energies. Yes, they have different frequencies or different expressions, yet both are necessary. For every up, there is a down. For every in, there is an out. For every right, there is a left. For every, so forth and so on, in every expression of this duality. because we come here for the experience of this. This is how the Most High experiences itself through many different expressions, you know, in this realm. It's not that it's learning itself, it's experiencing itself. It already knows itself, which is synonymous to what learning actually is. Because when you learn something, you're not actually adding something to yourself, because you already know everything that you will ever know, because you are actually pure truth in your core, because you come from source, the truth, right? So when you learn something, you're not adding something to yourself, you're freeing and accessing what's already there. So this is what the quest is, this is what the questioning is. So this is why, you know, that moving with purpose has purpose. So there are many different books and different information that y'all can find, you know, through that link for, you know, checking into things for yourselves. You know, I have conversations with many different individuals who have, like we all have, received the indoctrinations and the propaganda of the social engineered structure that we live under. And it's very difficult to run across information or to receive information that doesn't resonate with things or positions we've already chosen, you know, through our lower self, our egoic mind, our carnal self, that we must be right. We have to have the right answers. And so I just encourage us all not to challenge others, but to challenge yourself, to be willing to look into these things, to see exactly where they resonate within you and how you can continue the process of growing. We'll often say, well, this is my mind, this is who I am, I know who I am. And that's putting a finite state on yourself, saying that you're already complete, saying that you already have it. There's nothing more you need to do. There's no growing that's even possible. Yet, and it sounds good. The common saying is, man, I ain't changed, man, I'm still the same. That sounds good on the surface, but when you really look into it, think about what that is really saying. That's saying that in the last 10, 15, 20 years, you have not grown, you have not changed, you have not, because that's what change is. Change is growth, change is developing, change is expanding, you know. So you're saying that you have not done that. So it sounds good on the surface, but when we really dig into many of the things that we say and express, we'll find that there definitely is a deeper reality that takes us away from truth. This is why almost everything is about the external, or things in the external world, right? This is where a lot of the delusions and the exhausting of energy and fighting and bickering, whether it be over fighting over skin suits, fighting over carbon composites or compounds, which is everything in the physical world, is basically consists of the periodical charts or the elements, and carbon is a base in almost everything. And when you compound those carbons, most people refer to it as melanin. Yet that exists in most things in nature, is a requirement for that natural expression. Yet that is not the real you. That is not the true you. The true you is accessed through a much more spiritual, the breath, the energy, the breath of life, soul aspect of yourself, connection to source. Yet, so that's what this quest is. That's what the purpose is, to find your way back to that. Go through all of the different trials and tribulations, tests, challenges, you know, things of that nature, in order to find your way back to the source. And of course, definitely don't take my word for anything. Definitely don't, you know, take anything that I ever share as more than anything than a seed that you can seek to debunk, debase, discredit, dismiss, yet at least seek. So there are many titles you could find that tap into nationality or give you an idea. One of the videos that I have on the YouTube channel, Dr. Bay, taps you into what the straw man is, or meet your straw man. There's also a book called Meet Your Straw Man and Whatever You Want to Know, and it makes reference to we the people and how the government that we live in, as well as most governments around the world, are structured. That's definitely a great read. The Empress King actually mentioned it in a show last night that she was in, and I thought that was very powerful, that she actually had that document in her and is checking into it. Because until you break through a lot of the present day social construct, you won't really have or afford yourself the capability of really getting beyond that, because it is constant. It is they spend 24 hours, so-called, of every day keeping the people distracted, keeping the people away from realizing that they have a power locked within them, that they definitely have a power as a collective locked within them, right? There is no power that can overpower the power of the people except the power of the people. So they have to keep the people at odds, bickering, wrestling, fighting, gnawing at one another, because this is how you diffuse that power, by doing that, right? So there's no power that can overpower the power of the people except the power of the people. So divide and conquer is that concept, right? So life and the expression of life is the diversity of life. The diversity of life is not the disconnected dividedness of life. The diversity of life is nothing other than like nature. Nature has hundreds and thousands of different expressions of itself, hundreds and thousands of different flowers and expressions, yet all of them are connected and tied to the same landmass, to the same sources, the same ground. Some of these grounds vary, they have different components in them, yet all of them are part of this existence, this experience that is basically a school or a type of hell or Sheol, because it is things to experience away from your true self for the purpose of assisting you and finding your way back to your true self. So by whatever name and expression you express that. So I definitely want to make reminders of that, family. So we got my brother Rice on the panel.
Hey, Dr. Bay, can you tell us the definition of family?
Well, family has a few different expressions and connotations, and one of them is a servant, right? And y'all always hear me say family, family, right? Because family, and one simple expression is those willing to assist and serve others as themselves, right? Love ye one another. And so it can be tied into familia or familiar, and we are all actually familiar with one another, yet the social engineering has us so disconnecting and striving to create differences, create, and key in on all of the things that we disagree about. That term, let's agree to disagree, and then we put all of our energy into our disagreement, right? And don't put almost any energy into the agree aspect. So I say, let's agree to agree. Let's utilize our energy, our choices, to put energy into that so that we can amplify that, at least until they're both as balanced, to where our agreements and our disagreements are at least equal and balanced, and then they'll actually flow. So we got my brother Judah in the house. Honors to you, shalom. Well,
Dr. Bay, what up, what up, what up? I can't do the show love, man. That do have me blocked too. I want to give him peace of my mind. But let me ask you this. Do you honestly believe and feel that you can be a sovereign citizen in the United States
You can't
of
be
America?
a sovereign citizen. That don't exist.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
There's
you
no
can
such
really
thing as a
travel
sovereign
freely
citizen.
on their roads in your car with no license plate. You can really not walk around. You can really board a flight without an ID. You can book a hotel room without an ID. You can open a bank account without. Do you really believe that we can be sovereign citizens in the United States of America?
great question there, Brother Judah. Definitely appreciate your expression. And there's several things that I would like to unpack in that expression. And it's definitely going to, I trust, serve as something very edifying to the people. And I may have to replay it a few times to tap in, because I wrote down a few of them, but the ones that I did not, I'll replay it so that we'll have a full expression of it. And I want to give honors to the brother for asking the question, and want to make sure that I address this question. And one of the first things that I draw out of that is he asked me, do I honestly believe that you could be a sovereign citizen? And my answer to that is no. I think that a sovereign citizen, or I know that a sovereign citizen is a oxymoron, meaning that you cannot be sovereign and a citizen at the same time. Now, in order to come to that understanding, you would have to understand what it means and what it is to be sovereign. And you would also have to understand what it means to be a citizen, right? Because to be a citizen is synonymous to being a subject, or under the dictate, rule, authority of another, or under a contractual agreements of a compliance to another entity, right? And to be sovereign is to be autonomous, right? Meaning that the natural, inalienable, unalienable rights that you were born with, you are endowed with them, and no one can give or grant them to you. No charter, constitution, no document, no treaty, nothing can grant that to you. All those instruments can do is agree to secure those things that you were actually born with. So that is your autonomy. Now, when you have a collective of autonomous beings coming together, agreeing to work in accord with those concepts of natural law and common law. This is what is deemed as sovereignty, because this is how nations and governments are established. They're always established as a type of family, right? Family being the root, the foundation, the basis of government, right? Because government deals with governing your mentality, right?
He was talking about the rings.
Family structure concept should be that which is governing your mentality, not some group of individuals who are functioning as a corporate entity or a corporate construct that are deciding and dictating the governance of your mentality, right? So governments start and begin with the concept of family, right? And they're tied into the autonomy of each and every individual, which people definitely look up autonomy of each and every individual as a collective, developing and creating that sovereignty or that nation, right? That nation deals with the natural ions, the things that make you up as a collective, that tie you to landmass, which is more in association with that. And then one of the other things the brother said, he said, and be able to travel around in their system. I'm gonna replay it so I don't want to misquote, brother. I encourage us all to always be willing to speak as close to, the things when we're hypothecating whatever someone else says.
Dr. Bay, what up, what up, what up? I can't do the show love, man. That do have me blocked too. I want to give him a piece of my mind. But let me ask you this. Do you honestly believe and feel that you can be a sovereign citizen in the United States of America? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can really travel freely on their roads in your car with no license plate. You can really not walk around. You can really board a flight without an ID. You can book a hotel room without an ID. You can open a bank account without it. Like, do you really believe that we can be sovereign citizens in the United States of America?
All right. I think I tapped into a few more of what the brother asked. Yeah. He said, do I really think that you can be a sovereign citizen in the United States, right? Now, this is going to bring us to a realization that there are different expressions of the United States, right? You got the United States of America, which I spoke to earlier, that this entire continent is the Americas, right? So all of the nation states that exist on the entire continental mass make up the actual United States, right? Now, I'm sure that that's not what he was making reference to. What he was making reference to was the federal United States, right? Which is housed in Washington, D.C., in the 10 square miles of the District of Columbia. It's not a state, but it is a foreign entity that came into power in 1871, and it replaced the original Constitution, which was the Constitution for the United States of America, right? Which was a collaboration of the indigenous and those seeking asylum here as immigrants, and the formulation of that and the breakaway from British and other empirical rule, which also was melanated people. Yet that's a whole different bill, entire different story that y'all may find access to some of that in rvbaypublications.com. So he made the statement of in. So this is how I definitely want us to tap into the realization of when you say in, right? Because, for example, when people ask you where are you from or where are you, people will say, I'm in the state of whatever that may be, right? Now, of is also a very important preposition that people need to tap into, because all of these are mental constructs of grammar that are creating a type of mental ideology in your mind, right? So when you think that you're in the state of Texas, right? Okay, you have Texas state, and then you have state of Texas, right? These are two totally separate things, but we're going to speak to the one, the of, right? So when you think that you're in a state, right, or in the United States, you have to realize that these are mental, political, social constructs that have been placed on your mind that make you think that these geographical locations actually exist as if there are actual demarcation lines that exist and borders that restrict you or govern you. But when in actuality, as you're going along the highways and the byways, the most you'll see is a sign, a green sign on the side of the road that says the CORP period limits. That stands for corporate limits. That means you have entered into a corporate jurisdiction in your mind, in the minds, and written only on paper. It is not that these lines actually exist, the shapes of these states actually exist, but this is a social construct, right? So everything within the U.S. and the U.S. citizens fit underneath that. This is called jurisdiction. This is what gives jurisdiction over your living, live, natural being to another entity or another man or another group of men that put their pants on the same way you do. Most of this comes under what's called contract law, meaning that there's something that you did or someone did on your behalf that made you believe that you were a political corporate construct that needs authority and dictation to by that construct. Now, I'll tell you that none of the federal government, none of the states contracted to the federal government, none of the municipalities have ever spoken to you as a living, live, natural being with inalienable, unalienable rights, right? There is a literal war of occupation, colonial occupation going on here in this land, right? Those that know versus those that do not know, right? So that system that I was just speaking of deals with what's called contract law or trust law or legalese or the legal system, right? So in that legal system, because you are contracted, you're under the contract, then you are obligated to that contract by your own admission. Now, there are two things required for any contract to be valid. That is that both parties at least have to be fully aware of all of the tenets, all of the things that dictate and that tap into what that legal contract consists of, right? But because most of us is not aware of what all of the legal tenets of that contract being that birth certificate, that contract being that application for that social security number or that EIN number, which is an employee identification number, which makes you a employee of the federal government, right? Which again, we made reference to how employee is synonymous to servant or slave or prisoner of war, right? So by having these contracts that you are entered into or you have entered into and you exercise and function, it is not the liability or the fault of any entity or agency that is expressing this authority over your life. It is actually your fault and responsibility because it's your choice, right? We don't know that this entire system is voluntary. It is set up to present itself as if it has authority, but ultimately it has no authority outside of those that are governed by it. So the will of the people, the power of the people is the thing that actually gives power to all of these agencies. And if it did not have the will and the power of the people, they could not function, they could not exist because it requires your energy, just like that symbol of the matrix. It requires your battery, your life force, your electromagnetism, your soul, your spirit, you to be complicit, to be complacent, and to be volunteering to actually be under the authority of that. And you'll find many, many documents in that link above that makes reference to that you could actually find in the law of the land, the Constitution, in the Supreme Court rulings, in the many things that speak directly to that, right? So if you have the minds of the people all being compliant, all being complacent, then they're actually creating the very thing that they're complaining about unknowingly, right? Because most people don't know any of the rules of the game. This is why I often encourage people that if you don't know the rules of a game, no matter what that game is, especially the game of life, then you're destined to lose. So when you start finding out what the rules of this game are, what are the dictates of this civilization or the civics of it, what are the actual rules, so that I can make a decisive decision through my discernment as to how I would prefer for my energy to be applied to it, right? And so he mentioned license plates, right? And so many nationals, because there's a difference between a national, you can actually look up this up in the search engines too. You can look up the different categories of
that's what I try to say.
And the highest of which is a national, right? Nationals actually function outside of any corporate construct of colorable law or corporate government, and they actually are those that are to enforce the chartered agreements of those corporate governments, right? And everyone has the right to a nationality. Check the United States Constitution for the United States for information about that and the Bill of Rights. And so, so the license plates, right? Though the license or the permit, this is the first stage of a license plate, is the permit for a license. License is a type of permission. So if you're needing permission from anyone, then that is evidence that you are not living in your free natural capacity and that you are in states of subjugation or servitude, right? This is not speaking against the corporate entities being able to function as they choose to function, because they have the right to function as a corporation. They have the right to set rules, dictates, and human resource policies within their corporation. They have that right, right? Because they are corporations. The thing that is not known is that the people don't know that they have also been turned into corporations or sub-corporations of those corporations. This is what the birth certificate is. The birth certificate is a bonded contractual agreement that transfers or creates a corporation that is named exactly what you think, or what your parent or your parent that rents you, your parent named you, right? It creates a transferable document or entity or a corporation. Look up corporate person. There is a such thing as a corporate person. So it creates a corporate person, right? And so you think that they're speaking to you when they address you as a living, live, natural being. They have never spoken to you as a living, live, natural being. They have only spoken to the corporate construct that they created. And they always ask you to identify yourself, right? Because there's another codified word in the word identity, right? You don't have a name, right? That is a legal terminology in legalese. What you have is a nom de guerre, or a appellation and title, right? Those nationals have titles. They don't have names, right? This may seem, again, like semantics, but this is how the game is played. We may think that all of this stuff is frivolous, all of this stuff is silly, but you have to understand what is the DOA, what is the delegation of authority from any of these individuals. There is something that gives them the authority, right? What contractual agreement, what agreement has been made? At what point did you agree to have someone else dictating over your life, right? And then people say, well, it's for safety. It's so that people won't just be crashing and doing anything into one another. I agree. Safety is absolutely necessary. This is where safety should be locked in. It should be locked into your honor, right? You should be an honorable being, which nationals are taught to be honorable at all times, living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, right? So if you do something to infringe on someone else's peace and well-being, or to disrupt their livelihood, then you should be honorable, right? And held accountable if you don't. This is what the fifth principle of justice comes into play, right? So a lot of these entities were put in place in order to secure the inalienable, unalienable, autonomous, sovereign rights of each and every individual. And this is called government. This is called a republic. Nothing to do with Republican or Democratic parties, because these are two social constructs that were created within the corporate construct in order to give you the sense of false choice. All right. So with that being said, anytime you get a license or you tap into that permission aspect, then you are surrendering, you are complying, you are signing another contractual agreement. So this is what gives authority to those municipalities, those entities, those counties, those policy enforcers that you call police. Never call them police officers, because an officer is an elected individual, right? They're not elected, right? They are employees of that municipality that were given policies and codes, statutes, and rules in order to dictate over the people and for the purpose of collecting taxes, right? They're tax collectors. This is what their job is. This is what their obligation. When it says on the side of those cars to protect and serve, they're not protecting and serving you as a living, live, natural being. They're protecting and serving the public, which is a corporate construct that is under the legal jurisdiction of that corporation or that business. It's all business. It's all for profit. They have become your prophets, right? Seeking profit, right? Utilizing debt instruments called fiat currency, or money that everybody chases, spends all of their life, does anything to anyone and everyone because of not knowing the rules of the game and the Federal Reserve System and the role that it plays in your life and how it's dictating and governing to your life. And you, through compliance, you participate in it. So the very things that you complain about, all of the things you complain about, it could not exist without your energy. So you're actually responsible and compliant. So this taps into, can you board flights and without ID, right? By having your nationality card, that is a national identification that supersedes any state issued ID, any federal issued ID, because the state and the federal, they all are subservient to the supreme law of the land document known as the Constitution for the United States, right? So the things with nationality are international, national, and universal. Y'all definitely look into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Y'all look into the rights of the indigenous people. All of these documents are things that you can actually find, and you'll actually find them also, access to them also on that site in that link above. Everything that I'm talking about, everything that I'm speaking of, you can find information on it where you can do your own research, your own discernment from that and through that link, right? So just to put it on a different level, if you think that first of all, you're in a status of property, right? And there's a concept, a code that says property cannot own property. That literally doesn't make sense, right? So because you're in the status of property, by referring to yourself as Negro, black, colored, white, Indian, African, if you trace the origins of any and all of these terms, you're going to find that they came about at a certain time. They were not ancient. They were not from, long historical times. They are modern, right? And these modern finite terms had a purpose that was to create this social narrative, this social construct, in order to strip you of your inheritance or your attachment to your natural national self and place you under a certain jurisdiction. Y'all look up jurisdiction, look up jurisprudence, look up de facto, D-E-F-A-C-T-O, look up de jure, D-E-J-U-R-E. These are terms that you have to write down, you have to look them up, you have to do your due diligence, you have to do the work, you have to study, because definitely don't take my word for it. Me sitting on this app or any app, sharing information and things like that, I'm only dropping seeds, I'm only pointing in a direction. But everyone must take the walk, must take the course themselves, right? And so there's a lot of misunderstanding, and everything comes down to your mindset, right? Because once you reclaim your own mind and you start governing your own mentality, then you can begin to view things from a different perspective and through a different set of lenses, because you actually only have one eye. You have two lenses, but you have one eye, unless thine eye be single, right? And so, and the only way to change what you see is to change the way that you see things, right? And you have to be willing to be the change that you want to see in the world. I know a lot of us are familiar with all of these cliche sayings, things like that, yet we have to take them and embrace them and empower them. And this will tap us into the realization of what's really going on, right? So when you purchase, as property, you purchase, or you think you purchase, a motor vehicle, right? That's another code. There's a difference between a land conveyance or a automobile than a motor vehicle. Motor vehicle is a legal term that traps you into a certain type of jurisdiction. Everything that is done is wordplay. All of this stuff is wordplay, right? For example, when they stop you and they ask you, do you have any weapons, right? You have the right to bear arms. Arms is termed as different things like guns or things of that nature, right? You have that right under the Constitution, but because you're under a jurisdiction of colorful law where you don't have rights, you only have granted privileges, then you really don't have that right. Yet people that even express that right are getting tricked through the wordplay of the policy enforcers, because there's actually, do you have a weapon? And when you get to looking up what a weapon is something that's used to cause or with the intention of causing harm. So you think that a weapon and arms are all one and the same. All these things are magic wordplay spelling that they are programmed, taught, and trained at the academy, right? Academia, right? All of these things tie in. We just think that they're just frivolous terms because we just automatically hear them all the time, yet they all are part of a social construct that we're all involved in, and it will take all of us. The reason why, I often see a lot of brothers and sisters get kicked back, because they'll see brothers making the efforts, they'll be making the attempts to fight against that system or to make efforts to get out of that system, and they may seem to fail. Yet failure is necessary for success, right? You have to be willing to fail often in order to succeed once. Yet they'll make mockery of those individuals, not realizing that what they're actually doing is contributing to their own demise, because they should actually be assisting them. When they fail, then they should be the one right behind them, chipping away as much as possible. But because we were raised in a fear-mongered social construct, we don't realize that we have been placed into a coward mentality, right? To not be willing to go up against these things that seem to be so overwhelming, that seem to be so out of touch. But in actuality, it's actually really simple, and it's simply the matter of changing of a mind, right? And a willingness to assist in chipping away at this construct, right? Because we are under occupation. These are our lands. We are indigenous to this land, right? These things are provable, right? But because we have allowed ourselves, we started out allowing ourselves to be indoctrinated, and then we got manipulated and forced into being indoctrinated for generations and generations through things like the Christian Black Code, the Jim Crow laws. All of these different things became things to push you further and further and further and further away from realizing that you are an inherited national and indigenous of this land and all lands, all 7 so-called continents. But that's neither here nor there for now, right? We're going to stay within the context of when you think you buy a motor vehicle, right, and then you take and you go register that vehicle. Register is rooted in the word regis. If you look up the roots of the word regis, you'll find to turn over to the crown. The crown is the same foreign entity that is controlling the world or playing a part in controlling the world from way across the world. And that entity of District of Columbia and Canada, these are all crown colonies or crown corporations or crown businesses, right, that are extending contracts that so-called states have been contracted into with state constitutions attached to the federal constitution, because the federal constitution is the constitution of the United States, not the original constitution of the republic, the constitution for the United States. That's another study, right? So when you buy this motor vehicle, and I know I'm getting long-winded, but a lot of these things, as I said, require study. So there are a lot of different components, a lot of different aspects. And I don't want to go past too many things, but it all actually ties up together, right? So, and then you go and register your motor vehicle, right? Now that you have turned it over through your own free will, and you get this little sticker, right? So what the state does is you think that is your property, even if you're through paying for it as you think, right? And you think that you have the title. I want you to go back and re-examine that title. It's going to say certificate of title, right? Because possession is 9/10 of the law. So the state actually keeps the actual title, right? And they send you a certificate, a thank you, an appreciation of title, right? You think you have the title, so you take that certificate and you go register it in the county, the ward, the district, wherever you may live, right? And then they give you a slip of paper, a thank you note, right? With a little sticker that you put on this tag. A tag signifies the owner of something. Like when you tag something, you're autographing it or you're labeling it as your property, right? And if you look on these tags, if you look at the top in most cases or the bottom, depending on what state you're in, it will tell you exactly who owns that property, right? And then it'll say who it is leased to. That'll be the county, right? Underneath. And then the county subleases it to you and requires you to pay a tax on it or to renew your usefulness or your using their property. You may clean it, you may wash it, you may run around town flossing and thinking that it's all yours, but ultimately it's a long game. It's a long investment game of continuously receiving profit, right? So they're getting paid on every end from every type of way because they are about profit, right? So this is part of the game that you're caught up in and that you're participating in willingly, unknowingly, right? And that also goes into a lot of extended conversation about the ID, and all of that as well, because when you go take out an ID, you sign a contract to become under that jurisdiction, to become property, and you have received your permission to drive, right? And people say, well, if people didn't have licenses, everybody would be wrecking. If you actually do the statistics, for those that like statistics, even though statistics can easily be manipulated, and most of them are, if you look at them, almost 90% of everyone that has accidents, that has crashes, that runs into things, that harms people, that utilizes motor vehicles, that should be land conveyances or automobiles, but motor vehicles as weapons, they all have licenses. So that is an oxymoronic thought. I get it. Yet, if you have your nationality, the nationals also have their tag tags of identification that tie you to a sovereign jurisdiction that you could place and put on your land conveyance that are not under the jurisdiction, right? And that's a whole different story. Y'all look into all of the information on the site to find further and further information for that. But I trust that taps somewhat into what the brother Judah was saying, and he has another message, and that's one of my brothers that definitely loves to wrestle with me, and I appreciate it. Honest with you. Power up, bro Judah.
Yo, if you don't mind, man, I got a question for somebody in your audience, man. Hey, yo, Augustus, man. Yo, I never hear you talk, man. You be in all the good rooms, man, soaking up all this knowledge, man. But I never heard you talk, man. Yo, leave a message or something, man. What up, Augustus? Shout out to the rest of the listeners.
I understand you. I understand the Empress King. Power up.
Is there a source that details all of the symbols that the policy, which you just said, people wear? They're not officers, but enforcers?
I'm trying to really assess what your question is. You may have to reword it a little differently, but y'all could definitely check into the FOP, the Fraternal Order of the Police, which most of the policy enforcers are all a member of, which is actually a type of surety bond. Y'all look into surety bonds, right? Surety bond. This is the remedy, one of the remedies when these policy enforcers violate, the people. But the thing is, we don't realize that the reason why they seem to get away with it in so many cases, and they can kind of manipulate it according to their mindset, and we seem to think that they're just looking out for their own. They're just abusing the so-called black people. Because under colorable law, black people are under a status that's called civil liter mortuus, right? Which means civilly dead, meaning that you don't have any rights or you don't even actually exist. This sounds atrocious, and it is. This sounds very demonic, and it is. Yet it is true. Look into civil liter mortuus, right? And understand that by classifying yourself as a black or as a person of colorable law, they're viewing you that they don't have to express any rights. You don't have to receive any justice because you actually don't exist. So you're under a compounded level of contract. Not only are you under the contract of the birth certificate fraud program and the Social Security fraud program, but you're also under the legal status fraud program, right? Which disconnects you from having any rights. This is why everybody keeps getting disappointed, because they have a level of expectation that should be a similarity between morality and legality. Legality and morality have nothing to do with one another, right? They're literally opposite, right? So these are some of the things that the masses of the people need to start digging into to understand if we are to free ourselves. And it has nothing to do with what your belief is, because everyone has the right to a nationality, and everyone definitely has the right to the Moor nationality, because the Moor nationality is for those indigenous to this land, all the land, right? So you can be a Hebrew Israelite, you could be a Christian, you could be a Muslim, you could be under the tenets of Judaism or Buddhism or whatever, because Moors honor all of the divine, expressions and things like that. Because when you really get into understanding what a Moor is, you'll realize that a Moor is any copper tone individual, any of the various copper tone individuals from anywhere around the world, and all of those that descend from them. So everywhere you can use the word black, you could also use the word Moor, because these are modern or latter-day expressions to refer to the ancient people who have been on the planet since time immemorial and are the original people. So that definitely don't want to go too deep into that area, because this is not an addressing of the term, because so many people wrestle and fight over the term and the different tenets of identity crisis that we've suffered through. One generation thinks we're Negro, another generation thinks we're colored, another generation thinks we're Afro, another generation thinks we're African American, another generation thinks that we're black, back to black, all these different things. So I definitely don't put much energy into fighting and wrestling over those, because people take it personal. They think that you're attacking and addressing their personal ethnicity, their culture, their heritage, their many different expressions. Yet it is none of that. It has never been about that. It never will. Anyone that is expressing it like that is doing what many people are warned about, because anyone can take this information, this knowledge, and they can try to utilize it for their own personal benefit, their own personal gain. They can start trying to sell you packets, start trying to sell you information. But Nationality is free. That link above has all of the information you actually need to actually free yourself, and it's free. It was placed there for free. It's never been requested to receive or get anything from it. It was never designed that way. Yet you do have family members out here that take information, they go to sell it, because it does take a lot of work, it does take a lot of study, and if you are compelled to share something with them, I don't want anything from any of them, but if you are compelled to share something with anyone that is, sharing information, definitely do so. But know that it ultimately is free. It is yours to obtain, and it doesn't matter what your beliefs are, what your perspectives are, because you'll see that they all actually stem and come from more science. Everything that's out here does. When you understand that more simply means any of those that came through the 7 stages of development into the physical world, attached to the naval corps, they became the navigating elves, or the navigators of the land. And every one of us, if you could look down in front of your body and you have a naval corps, you did that. So ultimately, as if it was Adam and Eve, you all extend and are more. But that's another bill altogether. So, yeah, Empress, definitely look into that. And if you'll be more specific, I'll definitely try to see if I am aware or have information to any of the things that you're making reference to. We got the Empress TT Wolf on us. How up?
I know you might have already said it, Dr. Bay, but how do we become not their property anymore? How do we do that? I'm sorry, I'm working too and trying to pay attention. So if you haven't elaborated on that, can you do that as well?
Yes, beloved. Definitely that link above, Empress TT, has any and all of that information. And what I always encourage people to do is, before you make any moves, before you make any assertion toward anything, definitely spend some time studying. Never even speak about it until you've spent at least 7 days just reading it, checking into it, weighing it up, cross-referencing it, trying to refute it, trying to dispel it, until you at least done those things with yourself, for yourself, right? So definitely tap into that link. And then there are so many sources that if you tap in with me in the back channels, I can give you access to many different people that are sharing, that are talking, that are doing it publicly, that are doing it privately, many schools that are out here, because the Nationals have so many things going on that are not privy through mainstream media, because the mainstream media is definitely controlled by that same cabal of Unum Sanctum that has set up these corporate establishment in all of these lands, posing as law, posing as governments, posing as, entities that are for the people, posing and establishing compulsory educational school systems and higher learning school systems. This same cabal is behind all of it. And they're utilizing this tool, this product that we refer to as money, as the manipulating factor, because none of us have figured out how to live and exist without this tool. None of us knows how to exist without needing $1 for a biscuit, right? We're all, unfortunately, in that situation. And if we don't work together, we'll stay in that situation. And they're devising new plans to make you permanently in that situation, right? So definitely understand how the Federal Reserve Bank works, when it came effective, what is the Federal Reserve Act, why this corporation that's posing as the government, which is not the actual government, but is posing as the government, does not coin and make its own money, therefore creating a situation where it is in debt, a national deficit that it expresses to the people. If the country coined and made its own money, it could not be in debt, because it could satisfy those debts and ask ourselves why we're using debt instrument. And it says it on every one of those bills you can pull out of your pocket right now. It says this note is legal tender for all debts, both public and private. So it is a debt instrument utilized trying to solve a debt problem. So we have debt, trying to cure debt, which is called perpetual debt, and that's what we find ourselves in, which is why we find ourselves as eternal employees or eternal subjects, servants, or slaves, or prisoners of war. So Empress, definitely tap into that, and any specifics. That will definitely be first to study that, and then you begin the process of declaring your nationality. Declaring your nationality does not depend on any government, any state, any agency, any paperwork, any of that. Declaring your nationality is between you and the Most High, the source, by whatever reference you choose to refer to it as. It's between you. That is a declaration, a reclaiming of your mind. to tap yourself back into your sovereign capacity. This is where it began, right? And once you've securely and firmly done that, then you do what is referred to as a proclamation. A proclamation is called putting on the record or putting on notice any agency or agents that have previously to this moment, to this point, had a fictitious, fraudulent state of authoritative jurisdiction over your life, your living life, natural being, and you are revoking that. You're providing a revocation of power of attorney. You are declaring your appellation and title, your nationality, all of these things. So then you would send them out to the secretaries of state by whatever state you're in, or all of them, and even to the federal government. All of these things are recognized, they are formulated, they are international law, they are backed up by international law, they're backed up by national law, and they're backed up by the municipality. Yet, they're not under any obligation whatsoever to tell you these things. They will not tell you unless you go through them in a proper setting, in a what's called referred to as a special appearance, and not under the jurisdiction of their bar association. The bar is the BAR, the British Accredited Registry, which is another expression of how you can see that this is all British policy and British colonial inquisition that's still going on to this day, that we're surrendering to, we're submitting to, but it's only because we're not aware, we do not know the rules of the game. So anytime you go into a court setting, and either whether you've been kidnapped or what they call arrested, whether you've been kidnapped or whether you go on your own volition because you were under TDC, which is threat, duress, and coercion, you did not know that you do not have to participate in these things, but you chose to. And if you choose to, you should go under a special appearance, never surrendering your inalienable rights, but always reserving your rights and everything. And then there are processes and procedures you should definitely follow. And they are put in place to actually test you, design you. They're not going to let you pass if you're not qualified, if you're not standing firmly on your square. Many fail, many make attempts, and they're not going to let you. They're obligated to. They actually are all members of these secret societies that were established by utilizing the laws of the ancient people that was established in the way you establish civilization. So they took that information, and instead of utilizing it for the betterment of the people, they're utilizing it for their own selfish gains and needs. And this is how they're abusing and having dictation over the people. And many of the components, the policy enforcers that are in these situations, they don't know it. They're just employees following rules, and they'll always say, I'm just doing my job. And some of them do know it, right? And those that do not, and are just acting on their own volition because they was raised to be either racist or raised to be either, just hateful, and which is a mental disorder. They've not been diagnosed properly, so they definitely are suffering from a mental disorder. Yet we are not diagnosing that issue properly. We're not addressing it properly because we're out of our minds also by thinking that we should be compliant to a system that is not working for us. And we should be asking that same system for a remedy. This is not how you repair nations. You repair nations by understanding that you are a nation, that you are a family, that you are a government, that power is the people, that all governments were established of the people, for the people, by the people, for the betterment of the people. And this is what you must stand on, stand firmly on, and be willing to die on. Yet we're not at that place because we're still wrestling over different terminologies and labels and identity crises that were presented to us and provided for us so that we could argue, bicker, and wrestle with one another consistently. So, Empress TT, I trust that offers some clarity into that honesty, beloved. Power up, Empress King.
Policy enforcers wear similar symbols no matter what state we're in. I was asking if there was a source that outlines the details of the meanings behind the pentagrams and the eagles and everything that they wear.
Oh, yes. You can definitely find some information on that in RV Bay publications. There's a book, Isonomy, that you could actually get. In fact, Empress, now that I understand what you're looking for, what you're seeking, I'll definitely gather up that information and send it to you in the back chat so that you could access that and find pathways through the things that you're seeking to connect your dots.
I'm listening to them.
We got the Empress. It's a read.
I've been on here
Honestly, I love it.
Hey, Dr. B.
I'll holler at y'all.
I'm just curious.
I'm from Dr. B too. I'm finna take me a nap. I know the answers to most of these questions.
I don't
gotta
even know
tap
how to
in.
work.